January 9th, 1936, Springfield Armory, Massachusetts. The United States Army made a decision that would give American infantry a firepower advantage no enemy could match. They adopted a rifle that looked almost conventional, a wooden stock, a gas-operated action, an 8-round clip. But this rifle did something no standard-issue military weapon had ever done before. It fired again, and again, and again, without the soldier touching anything except the trigger. The M1 Garand became the first semi-automatic rifle ever adopted as standard issue by any nation on Earth. And it gave every American rifleman the firepower of 3 German soldiers. General George Patton would later call it the greatest battle implement ever devised. He was not exaggerating. The problem American infantry faced in the years before World War II was simple to understand but seemingly impossible to solve. Every major military power equipped its infantry with bolt-action rifles. The German Karabiner 98K, the British Lee-Enfield No. 4, the Japanese Arisaka, Type 99, the Soviet Mosin Nagant. All of them required the soldier to manually cycle the bolt after every single shot. Pull the trigger, lift the bolt handle, pull it back, push it forward, lock it down, aim again, pull the trigger. A trained German soldier with a Karabiner 98K could fire 10 to 15 aimed rounds per minute. That rate assumed ideal conditions: a comfortable firing position, no enemy fire incoming, no stress, no fatigue, no fear. In actual combat, the rate dropped further. Cold fingers fumbled with bolt handles. Mud and dirt jammed actions. The shaking hands of men under fire struggled with the fine motor control required to operate a bolt-action rifle quickly. A skilled British soldier with his Lee-Enfield, which had the fastest bolt action of any major military rifle, could manage 20 to 30 rounds per minute. The Lee-Enfield's rear-locking lugs and 60-degree bolt throw made it faster than the Mauser design used by Germany and most other nations. But even the Lee-Enfield was still a bolt action. Every shot required the soldier to break his firing position, work the mechanism, and reacquire his target. The United States War Department recognized this fundamental limitation. They had seen the carnage of World War I, where machine guns dominated the battlefield and individual riflemen became almost irrelevant. They wanted something better for their infantry. They wanted a rifle that would fire as fast as a soldier could pull the trigger and acquire a new target. They wanted semi-automatic firepower in the hands of every rifleman. The engineering challenge was enormous. Semi-automatic mechanisms had existed for decades in sporting and hunting rifles, but making one reliable enough for military service, simple enough for mass production, rugged enough for combat conditions, and powerful enough to use the standard .30-06 Springfield cartridge was another matter entirely. John Cantius Garand believed he could solve it. Born on January 1, 1888, in the small town of Saint-Remy, Quebec, Canada, Garand grew up on a farm. His family moved to Connecticut when he was 11 years old. He never received formal engineering training. Instead, he taught himself mechanics working in textile mills, starting as a bobbin boy at age 12 in Jewett City. The young Garand became fascinated by the machinery around him. He spent his spare time learning how things worked, taking them apart, putting them back together. He learned forging, welding, and steam engineering through observation and experimentation. By 1918, Garand had developed enough skill to begin working on firearms design. His first prototypes used an unusual primer-actuated blowback system. The expanding primer cap in the fired cartridge would push backward and unlock the bolt. The system worked, but it had a fatal flaw. The new progressive burning propellants being developed produced inconsistent primer setback. The rifle would sometimes jam. Sometimes it would fire out of battery. The military rejected it. Garand did not give up. He joined the Springfield Armory in 1919 and started over. This time, he focused on gas operation. The principle was elegant in its simplicity. When the rifle fired, the burning propellant produced expanding gases that pushed the bullet down the barrel. These gases contained enormous energy. If some of that energy could be captured and directed, it could cycle the action automatically. Garand designed a system where a small port drilled into the barrel near the muzzle would bleed off a portion of these gases. The gases would enter a cylinder beneath the barrel and push against a piston. The piston would drive an operating rod backward. The operating rod would unlock and open the bolt, ejecting the spent cartridge and chambering a fresh round. All automatically. All in a fraction of a second. Anything except pulling the trigger again. Through the 1920s, Garand refined his design relentlessly. He competed against other semi-automatic systems being developed by talented designers across the country. The Pedersen rifle used a toggle-locked delayed blowback system. The Thompson, the rifle used a friction-delayed blowback. The Bang rifle used muzzle cap gas operation. Testing at Aberdeen Proving Ground and Fort Benning pitted these designs against each other and against the existing bolt-action Springfield M1903. The trials were exhaustive. Rifles were fired. Thousands of rounds. They were dunked in mud, exposed to dust, frozen and thawed, baked in heat. Many designs failed. The Pedersen required special waxed ammunition and proved unreliable in dirty conditions. The Thompson was expensive and complex. The Bang had extraction problems. Garand's design survived. By 1930, he had a working prototype, but the Army wanted it chambered for a new caliber, the .276 Pedersen. This intermediate cartridge promised reduced recoil and flatter trajectory. Garand redesigned his rifle for the new caliber. Testing proceeded smoothly. In 1932, the Army was preparing to adopt both the new cartridge and the new rifle. Then politics intervened. General Douglas MacArthur, the Army Chief of Staff, refused to adopt the .276 Pedersen. The Army had enormous stockpiles of .30-06 Springfield ammunition left over from World War I. Switching calibers would mean scrapping billions of rounds of perfectly good ammunition. MacArthur ordered all development to focus on the .30-06. Garand went back to his workshop. Within months, he had a working prototype chambered for the powerful .30-06 Springfield cartridge. This was critical. It meant existing ammunition stockpiles would work with the new rifle. Logistics officers breathed a sigh of relief. On August 3, 1933, the rifle was officially designated the Semi-Automatic Rifle, caliber .30, M1, 75. Rifles were produced for field testing in May 1934. 50 went to infantry units. 25 went to cavalry. Problems emerged. The gas trap system that captured propellant gases at the muzzle proved unreliable in dusty conditions. Accuracy standards were not consistently met. The bolt release mechanism caused malfunctions. Garand fixed them all. He redesigned the gas port system in 1939, drilling directly into the barrel about 4 inches from the muzzle. This eliminated the troublesome gas trap. He strengthened the bolt release. He tightened manufacturing tolerances. The modifications transformed the rifle from temperamental prototype to dependable infantry weapon. On January 9, 1936, the M1 Garand was officially adopted as the standard United States service rifle, replacing the bolt-action Springfield M1903 that had served since 1903. The first production rifle was successfully proof-fired, function-fired, and fired for accuracy on July 21, 1937. Mass production had begun. Springfield Armory started slow. The M1 Garand was a complex weapon by the standards of the day, more difficult to manufacture than a simple bolt action. Initial production reached just 10 rifles per day, but American industrial might was ramping up. By January 1940, Springfield was producing 100 rifles per day. The delivery bottleneck was shifting from manufacturing to training. Soldiers needed to learn this new weapon. Then came December 7, 1941. The attack on Pearl Harbor thrust America into World War II. Suddenly, the Army needed not thousands but millions of M1 Garand rifles. Springfield Armory shifted to wartime production. By January 1942, just 1 month after Pearl Harbor, production had reached 1,103 rifles per day. The Armory ran 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Production continued climbing. In 1943, Winchester Repeating Arms Company joined the effort. The famous firearms manufacturer had received an educational contract in 1939 to produce 500 rifles, learning the manufacturing process. Now they scaled up to full war production. By January 1944, combined production peaked at levels that seemed impossible. Springfield Armory alone produced 122,001 M1 rifles in a single month. That translated to 3,936 rifles per day, 164 rifles per hour, nearly 3 rifles every minute, around the clock, for 31. Thanks for watching. Include, for $7 for week, consecutive days. American industry had done what no enemy could counter. It had put a semi-automatic rifle in the hands of every infantryman. The specifications of the M1 Garand revealed why it dominated the battlefield. Caliber 30.06. Springfield designated 7.6, 2x60, just end caliber, 3 mm in metric notation. The same powerful full-bore cartridge that had served American forces since 1906. The round pushed a 150-grain bullet at 2,800 feet per second, delivering nearly 2,800 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. Barrel length, 24 inches, rifled with 4 grooves in a right-hand twist. Overall length, 43.6 inches. Weight unloaded, 9.5 pounds. With a loaded 8-round clip, weight increased to approximately 10.2 pounds. Muzzle velocity, 2,800 feet per second, with M2 ball ammunition. Some lots tested as high as 2,837 feet per second. Effective range, 500 yards against man-sized targets. Soldiers were trained that beyond 500 yards, hitting a battlefield target became difficult for the average rifleman. The rifle itself remained accurate at much greater distances. Maximum range, 3,200 yards with the trajectory arcing high before falling. Magazine capacity, 8 rounds loaded via an en-bloc clip that remained inside the action until the last round was fired. Rate of fire, 40 to 50 aimed rounds per minute in the hands of a trained soldier. This was the specification that changed everything. If you're enjoying this deep dive into American engineering, consider subscribing. It helps the channel and ensures you do not miss the next 40 to 50 aimed rounds per minute. Not spray and pray automatic fire, not hip shooting at close range. 40 to 50 precisely aimed shots, each one going exactly where the soldier pointed his rifle, every single minute. Compare that to the German Karabiner 98K. The standard German infantry rifle fired the 7.92 by 57 mm Mauser cartridge from a 5-round internal magazine loaded via stripper clips. Rate of fire, 10 to 15 rounds per minute for a trained soldier under ideal conditions. The M1 Garand gave every American rifleman 3 to 4 times the firepower of his German counterpart. Compare it to the British Lee-Enfield No. 4 Mark I, the fastest bolt-action rifle in major military service, with its smooth rear-locking bolt and 10-round magazine. Rate of fire, 20 to 30 rounds per minute for highly trained soldiers. The famous Mad Minute drill had seen exceptional British marksmen put 38 rounds on target in 60 seconds. Even against the best bolt action in the world, the M1 Garand delivered superior firepower, and American soldiers did not need to be exceptional marksmen to achieve it. The rifle did the work. The mechanical operation of the M1 Garand was remarkably elegant. When the soldier pulled the trigger, it released the hammer. The hammer swung forward under spring tension and struck the firing pin. The firing pin drove into the primer of the chambered cartridge, igniting the primary explosive. The primer flame ignited the main propellant charge. The burning powder generated rapidly expanding gases that pushed the bullet forward down the barrel. As the bullet passed a small hole drilled in the barrel approximately 4 inches from the muzzle, a portion of the expanding gas entered a cylinder beneath the barrel. This gas pushed against a long stroke piston that was integral with the operating rod. The operating rod was driven rearward. A cam surface on the operating rod engaged the bolt, rotating it to unlock the locking lugs from their recesses in the receiver. The bolt traveled rearward, extracting the spent cartridge case from the chamber and ejecting it out the top of the receiver. During this rearward travel, the operating spring was compressed. The hammer was also caught and held by the sear, cocking the action for the next shot. When the bolt reached its rearmost position, the compressed operating spring began pushing it forward again. The bolt stripped a fresh cartridge from the on-block clip and pushed it into the chamber. As the bolt completed its forward travel, the cam surface rotated it to lock the locking lugs into place. All of this happened in approximately 1/10 of a second. Before the soldier had time to consciously register that his rifle had fired, it was ready to fire again. All he had to do was acquire his next target and pull the trigger. The feeding system deserves special attention because it was unique among military rifles of the era. The M1 Garand used an en-bloc clip, a stamped steel container that held 8 rounds of ammunition. The soldier loaded the rifle by pressing the entire clip down into the open action from above. The clip remained inside the receiver, holding the rounds in position for the bolt to strip and chamber them. When the last round was fired, the follower inside the magazine pushed the empty clip upward. A spring-loaded clip latch released it. The clip was ejected forcefully from the top of the receiver, producing a distinctive metallic ping sound. Rumors and myths accumulated around this ping during the war. Stories spread that enemy soldiers, particularly Germans and Japanese, would listen for the ping to know when an American soldier had fired his last round. They would then rush the vulnerable soldier before he could reload. The evidence does not support this myth. In the chaos of combat, with gunfire, explosions, artillery, shouting, vehicle engines, and the deafening noise of battle, distinguishing the quiet ping of a single ejecting clip from anything else was essentially impossible. The ping sound did not travel far. At combat distances of 50, 100, or 200 yards, it was inaudible over the general din. A 1953 technical memorandum from the Korean War, titled Use of Infantry Weapons and Equipment in Korea, surveyed soldiers about their experiences with the M1 Garand. The document found that more than twice as many soldiers considered the ping useful as a clear reminder to reload than believed it posed any danger. Some American soldiers even learned to exploit the myth, throwing empty clips against rocks, helmets, or other hard surfaces to produce the ping sound and trick enemies into exposing themselves for an attack that never came. The truth was simpler. The ping was a minor feature of a major weapon. It did not matter. What mattered was combat performance, and the combat record of the M1 Garand proved its superiority in battle after battle across every theater of World War II. The European theater provided the most direct comparisons between American and German infantry weapons. On June 6, 1944, American forces stormed the beaches of Normandy in the largest amphibious invasion in history. At Omaha Beach, soldiers of the 1st Infantry Division and 29th Infantry Division faced the most heavily defended sector. German troops of the 352nd Infantry Division held the bluffs overlooking the beach. Those German soldiers carried Karabiner 98K rifles, 5-round magazines, 10 to 15 rounds per minute. They also had machine guns, mortars, and artillery. But when it came to rifle against rifle, they were outgunned. The Americans coming at them through the surf and across the sand carried M1 Garands, 8-round clips, 40 to 50 rounds per minute. German defenders later described the overwhelming volume of accurate fire they received. They had expected American infantry to behave like British or Soviet infantry, advancing cautiously and firing sparingly. Instead, the Americans seemed to fire constantly. Every soldier who could see a target was shooting at it, repeatedly, rapidly. Machine guns create suppressive fire. They force enemies to keep their heads down. But machine guns are heavy, crew-served weapons. They cannot be everywhere. The M1 Garand gave every American rifleman suppressive capability. A squad of 12 men armed with Garands could put out more aimed fire than a squad of 12 men with bolt actions plus a machine gun. In the hedgerows of Normandy, the bocage country where high earthen walls and thick vegetation created a nightmare maze of ambush positions, the M1 Garand proved even more decisive. Combat in the hedgerows was close and sudden. A German soldier would appear from behind cover, fire, and attempt to duck back. With a bolt-action rifle, an American had perhaps one chance to hit him, miss, and the German would be gone before the bolt could be cycled. With an M1 Garand, an American could fire 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds in the time it took the German to realize he had been spotted. The high rate of fire closed the reaction window. Germans who tried the shoot and scoot tactics that worked against bolt actions found themselves hit by follow-up shots before they could move. The Battle of the Bulge in December 1944 tested American weapons under the worst possible conditions. The German Ardennes offensive caught Allied forces by surprise. Snow, ice, and temperatures dropping below zero made life miserable for everyone. Rifles froze, lubricants congealed, mud that thawed during the day froze solid at night. The M1 Garand kept working. Its gas operation system proved remarkably resistant to cold. The operating rod and piston had relatively loose tolerances, intentionally designed that way. Dirt and ice that would bind a precision mechanism barely affected the Garand. Soldiers reported that rifles caked with frozen mud, rifles that had been dropped in snow, rifles that had spent the night in foxholes at 10 below zero, still functioned reliably. They might need a cleaning when opportunity permitted, but they fired when they needed to fire. The German counteroffensive eventually failed, and American forces pushed into Germany itself. By March 1945, GIs were crossing the Rhine. By April, they were meeting Soviet forces on the Elbe. On May 8th, Germany surrendered. Throughout the campaign, the M1 Garand had delivered exactly what John Garand had designed it to deliver. Semi-automatic firepower in the hands of ordinary soldiers, 3 rounds for every one the enemy could return. Victory through superior engineering. The Pacific theater presented different challenges. Japanese forces employed different tactics than Germans. The infamous Banzai Charge, a massed infantry assault designed to overwhelm defenders through shock and numbers, had proven effective against armies equipped with bolt-action rifles. The theory was simple. A wave of charging soldiers could cover open ground faster than defenders could shoot them all down. By the time a soldier with a plunge bolt-action rifle fired, worked his bolt, aimed, and fired again, the attackers had gained significant ground. Some would fall. Enough would survive to reach the defenders and fight hand-to-hand, where Japanese soldiers believed their superior spirit would prevail. Against Americans armed with M1, Garands, Banzai charges became suicide missions. The first charges came at Guadalcanal in 1942 and 1943. Japanese officers, accustomed to fighting Chinese troops armed with a mix of bolt actions and older weapons, expected the Americans to behave similarly. They were wrong. Marine and Army rifle squads laid down walls of fire that no charge could penetrate. Each rifleman fired 40 to 50 rounds per minute. A squad of 12 men fired nearly 600 rounds per minute of aimed semi-automatic fire. The charging Japanese soldiers were cut down in waves. Survivors reported that facing American rifle fire was different from anything they had experienced. There were no gaps, no pauses, no moments when the fire slackened as defenders cycled their bolts. The fire was continuous, relentless, overwhelming. Japanese officers eventually recognized the futility. By 1944, at Iwo Jima and Okinawa, Banzai charges had been largely abandoned in favor of defensive warfare from prepared positions. Japanese strategy shifted to make Americans pay dearly for every yard, to inflict maximum casualties, to delay as long as possible. This was still brutal, bloody combat. But it was combat where American firepower advantage counted for less. The M1 Garand had made an entire tactical doctrine obsolete, forcing the enemy to fight on terms less favorable to their traditions. Comparative analysis against enemy and Allied weapons demonstrated American superiority in concrete, measurable terms. The German Karabiner 98K was an excellent bolt-action rifle by any standard. Derived from the legendary Gewehr 98 that had served Germany since 1898, it combined accuracy, reliability, and rugged construction. Caliber 7.92 by 57 mm Mauser, an 8 mm round that propelled a 198 grain bullet at approximately 2,460 feet per second, muzzle energy approximately 2,100 foot-pounds. Magazine capacity 5 rounds in an internal magazine loaded via stripper clips. Rate of fire 10 to 15 rounds per minute for trained soldiers. Weight approximately 8.8 pounds unloaded. Length 43.7 inches. Effective range 500 meters. The Karabiner 98K was accurate. It was reliable. It was well made. German soldiers respected their rifles and used them effectively. But no matter how skilled the German soldier, no matter how accurate his shooting, he was outgunned 3-1 by an average American with an M1 Garand. Every German rifleman faced this disadvantage in every engagement. The German military attempted to close the gap. The Gewehr 43, designated G43, was a semi-automatic rifle that entered service in 1943. It used a gas-operated system similar in concept to the Garand, tapping propellant gases to cycle the action automatically. The G43 fired the same 7.92 by 57 mm Mauser cartridge as the Karabiner 98K. It used a 10-round detachable magazine, giving it greater capacity than the Garand's 8-round clip. On paper, it should have been competitive. In practice, the G43 arrived too late and in too few numbers to matter. German industry was under constant Allied bombing. Resources were directed to tanks, aircraft, submarines. Rifle production was a lower priority. Germany produced approximately 400,000 Gewehr 43 rifles during the entire war. Many went to designated marksmen and snipers rather than ordinary infantry. The average German soldier still carried a Karabiner 98K. The United States produced over 4 million M1 Garands during the same period, 10 times as many semi-automatic rifles. Every American infantryman carried one. The German Sturmgewehr 44 represented a different approach to the problem. Rather than trying to match the M1 Garand's power and accuracy, German engineers created something new, an assault rifle firing an intermediate-powered cartridge. The St. G44 used the 7.92 by 33 mm Kurz cartridge, a shortened version of the standard Mauser round. This allowed controllable automatic fire and a lighter, more compact weapon. It was the grandfather of the modern assault rifle. But the St. G44 also arrived too late and in too few numbers. Production began in 1944. By the war's end, Germany had produced fewer than 500,000. Most went to elite units on the Eastern Front. The average German soldier fighting Americans in Normandy, the Bulge, or the Rhine crossings still carried a bolt-action Karabiner 98K. He was still outgunned 3-1. The British Lee-Enfield No. 4. Mark I deserves careful comparison because it represented the pinnacle of bolt-action design. The Lee-Enfield had served the British Empire since 1895 in various forms. The No. 4, adopted in 1941, incorporated lessons from decades of combat use. Its rear-locking bolt required only a 60-degree throw to unlock and open, compared to 90 degrees for Mauser designs. This made it faster to cycle. Caliber 303 British. a rimmed cartridge that pushed a 174-grain bullet at approximately 2,500 feet per second. Magazine capacity: 10 rounds in a detachable box magazine. Those soldiers were trained to use stripper clips and keep the magazine attached. Rate of fire: 22, 30 rounds per minute for trained soldiers. Exceptional marksmen could achieve higher rates for short periods. Weight: approximately 9.1 pounds. Length: 44.5 inches. The Lee-Enfield was arguably the finest bolt-action rifle ever produced for military service. Its smooth action, generous magazine capacity, and proven reliability made it beloved by British and Commonwealth soldiers. But it was still a bolt-action. Even the fastest bolt-action in the world required manual cycling after every shot. British infantry units in 1944 and 1945 still fought alongside American units. They saw what the M1 Garand could do. They understood the firepower gap. The British Army never adopted a semi-automatic rifle during World War II. Development programs existed but never reached production. British infantry remained at a fundamental firepower disadvantage compared to their American allies throughout the war. The Soviet Union faced similar challenges. Most Soviet infantry carried the Mosin-Nagant rifle, a bolt-action design dating to 1891, 5-round magazine, approximately 10 rounds per minute rate of fire. The Soviets did produce semi-automatic rifles. The SVT-40, designed by Fedor Tokarev, entered service in 1940. It fired the 7.62 by 54 mm rimmed cartridge and used a 10-round detachable magazine, but the SVT-40 had reliability problems. It was sensitive to ammunition quality, which Soviet wartime production could not always guarantee. It was complex to maintain, difficult for conscript soldiers to keep functioning in field conditions. Production numbers remained limited. Most Soviet infantry still carried Mosin-Nagants. They made up for the firepower disadvantage through numbers, artillery, and the submachine guns that Soviet doctrine emphasized for close-range combat. But rifle against rifle, Soviet soldiers faced the same disadvantage as everyone else against Americans with M1 Garands. Total production numbers demonstrate the scale of American industrial achievement. During World War II, Springfield Armory produced 3,526,922 M1 rifles. The armory had existed since 1777, producing American military weapons for over 160 years. The M1 Garand was its greatest achievement. Winchester Repeating Arms Company, famous for lever-action rifles and shotguns, produced 513,880 M1 rifles between December 1940 and June 1945. Winchester had never manufactured military rifles at this scale before. They learned, adapted, and delivered. Combined World War II production totaled 4,040,802 rifles. After the war ended, production paused. Springfield Armory rebuilt over 500,000 M1 rifles that had been damaged or worn in combat, refurbishing them for continued service. When the Korean War began in June 1950, the M1 Garand returned to combat. New contracts were issued to increase production. Springfield Armory resumed manufacturing in early 1952. International Harvester Company, better known for farm equipment, produced 337,623 M1 rifles between 1953 and 1956. Harrington and Richardson Arms Company produced 428,600 rifles. Springfield Armory built its final M1 service rifle on May 17, 1957. Total Springfield production reached 4,188,669 rifles. Combined total production from all manufacturers exceeded 5.4 million M1 Garand rifles. The M1 Garand served as the standard American service rifle until March 26, 1958, when it was officially replaced by the M14. But the M14 was essentially an upgraded Garand. It used the same gas operation system, the same rotating bolt, many similar components. John Garand had helped develop it at Springfield Armory before his retirement in 1953. His design lived on in the next generation. Many Allied nations received M1 Garands through military aid programs after World War II. South Korea, West Germany, Italy, Japan, Denmark, Greece, Turkey, Iran, South, Vietnam, the Philippines, and others all armed their forces with surplus Garands. The rifle that had beaten their armies or liberated their countries now defended them. Beretta in Italy even manufactured approximately 100,000 M1 rifles under license, using Winchester tooling for NATO forces. John Garand himself lived to see his rifle become legend, but he never profited from it. As a government employee at Springfield Armory, his patents belonged to the United States. He received his modest civil service salary and nothing more. He never received royalties on over 5 million formants. Rifles bearing his name. A bill was introduced in Congress to award him $100,000 in recognition of his extraordinary contribution to American victory in World War II. The bill failed to pass. Congressional politics and bureaucratic indifference denied the inventor any financial reward. Garand received the Medal for Meritorious Service in 1941. He received the Medal for Merit in 1944. These were honors, recognition. They were not compensation. He retired from Springfield Armory in 1953 after 34 years of service. He died on February 16, 1974, at age 86. He never sought publicity, never complained about the lack of compensation, never demanded recognition. The rifle that bears his name earned praise from the highest levels of American military leadership. On January 26, 1945, Lieutenant General George Patton wrote a letter to Major General Levin Campbell, the Chief of Ordnance at the War Department. The letter opened with a single declarative sentence that would become one of the most famous quotes in military firearms history. In my opinion, the M1 rifle is the greatest battle implement ever devised. Patton continued, praising American machine guns, mortars, artillery, and tanks. He called them without equal on the battlefields of the world. He credited the unconquerable veterans wielding these weapons with ensuring the utter destruction of the enemy. But he put the M1 Garand first, the greatest battle implement ever devised. This was not idle flattery from a general trying to please ordnance officers. George Patton knew weapons. He had personally used pistols to kill men in combat during the Pancho Villa expedition in 1916. He had commanded tank forces in World War I. He had led armored divisions across North Africa, Sicily, France, and Germany. Patton understood warfare at every level, from the individual soldier pulling a trigger to theater-level strategy involving hundreds of thousands of men. When he said the M1 Garand was the greatest battle implement ever devised, he meant it. The rifle had given American infantry an advantage no enemy could match. 40 to 50 accurate rounds per minute against 10 to 15, 3 to 4 times the rate of fire, 3 to 4 times the lethality. German infantry faced American GIs and found themselves outgunned by ordinary riflemen. Japanese soldiers charged American positions and were cut down in waves. British and Soviet allies fought alongside Americans and saw the future of infantry warfare. The M1 Garand represented a fundamental shift in military thinking. Before 1936, rifles were precision instruments for skilled marksmen. After 1936, rifles became volume fire weapons for everyone. The United States entered World War II as the only nation on Earth with a semi-automatic rifle as standard issue for its infantry. No other country had achieved this. Germany had not. Britain had not. The Soviet Union had not. Japan had not. That advantage, created by a self-taught engineer from Quebec who received no formal training and no financial reward for his invention, helped win the war. When American soldiers landed at Normandy, at Anzio, at Iwo at every beach and beachhead of the Pacific and European theaters, they carried the most advanced infantry rifle in the world. Their enemies carried bolt actions, The outcome was predictable. John Garand never became famous. He never sought the do spotlight. He worked quietly at Springfield Armory, solving problems, improving designs, serving his adopted country. His rifle became famous instead. His rifle changed warfare. His rifle armed the greatest generation of American soldiers and helped them save the world. The M1 Garand, 9.5 pounds of American engineering, 8 rounds of .30-06 Springfield, 40 to 50 aimed rounds per minute, the greatest battle implement ever devised.